It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the International Peace Institute for this launch of the New York Group of Friends of the African Women Leaders Network. I'm particularly delighted that we've been able to partner on this event, given my role as the lead of IPI's new standalone Women, Peace, and Security program. I'm Sarah Taylor. I will appear later in the program, but at the moment, to start the substantive part of the program, I would very much like to invite Ambassador Pobi to the stage to begin the events.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all in my capacity as the first chair of the Group of Friends of the African Women Leaders Network to this official launch of the group. I must admit that I'm really excited that we have made it this far as a group, and more importantly, also about the potential that this vibrant cross-regional group can do to champion the agenda of parity, women's empowerment, and women's rightful role in peace, security, and development in Africa. It is a true example of the kind of partnership and cooperation that is necessary to achieving our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous world and to ensuring that no one is left behind. While thanking the International Peace Institute for hosting us on their premises, I would like to, from the onset, to also express appreciation to the leadership of the Africa Union Commission. And today I have the pleasure and honor to introduce our new AU observer, Ambassador, Her Excellency Fatima Mohammed, and she will be speaking to us very soon. Our thanks also go, of course, to the United Nations and through the UN Women who have played such a critical role in getting the network going and in this particular activity. We also, of course, thank the German mission, Ambassador Christoph, who is my vice chair. And we're expecting the DSG, Excellency Amina Mohammed, to join us. She's running a little late. And so we will have her. She'll be speaking to us to deliver the keynote address for this launch. But I'm also happy to introduce His Excellency Mr. Taib Zerhun of the Department for Political Affairs, who is with us. And last but certainly not the least, two eminent women in our midst. We have Her Excellency, the former President of Malawi, Madame Joyce Banda, and the Nobel Peace Laureate, Madame Lehman Bowie. We thank them for showing up and to grace this occasion. And so a warm welcome to my colleague ambassadors and representatives of permanent missions, the group of friends, those who are thinking of joining the group. We hope that this event will spur you on to sign on. And I wish you all a pleasant evening. I would like to give the floor now to the AU observer to give us her remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, distinguished guests, all protocols observed, as we love to say in Nigeria. I am honored to join you this evening for the launch of the New York Group of Friends of the African Women Leaders Network. Under the wise leadership, of course, of Her Excellency Martha Pobe of Ghana, and His Excellency Ambassador Christoph Hösgen of the Federal Republic of Germany. It's actually a double honor for me to be here tonight because this is actually the first event that I'm officially speaking at since I took office a few days ago. And what a way to come in, right? The cross-regional and dynamic group that we have the pleasure to witness is a clear testament of our personal commitment and to make this initiative an action-oriented group with a universal outreach. The launching of the New York Group of Friends demonstrates that Africa and the international community are fully committed to pool efforts and work together to enhance the role and leadership of women in the transformative agenda that Africa has embarked on with Agenda 2063, aiming at improving lives, the well-being of women and girls and the people of our continent. The African Union Commission has acknowledged this role that has been played by women and the girl child since it adopted the gender parity principle in 2002. This is something that many people are not aware of. And across the continent, there have been commendable efforts made to ensure that women take their rightful place in decision-making, in political participation from the private sector to parliament, representation in parliaments across the continent. The AU Commission Chairperson, His Excellency Moussa Faki, fully recognizes that women meaningfully participate, that when women fully participate, be it in peace and security or development processes, we witness immediate and tangible results. He has demonstrated his full political will and commitment to the African Women Leaders Network. And in several instances, most especially during the latest AU summit in January 2018, where the UN Secretary General and the AU champion for gender, His Excellency, the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, was present. I have the honor this evening to reaffirm the AU's commitment to this joint UN-AU initiative this evening. Since its launch in June, the AWLN has adopted an action-oriented approach with the first AU-UN high-level solidarity mission in Nigeria and in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This was carried out under the leadership of the DSG, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, and together with the AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, Mrs. Benetta Diop, the Women Executive Director and the UN Secretary General's representative on sexual violence and conflict, as well as pioneer members of this network. This was carried out in July in 2017. Moreover, the UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly organs were both jointly briefed in August and September on the practical outcomes of the network. The network held its first meeting of the Interim Steering Committee in Addis in December 2017. After its launch, the Group of Friends is called to play a key role in disseminating the experiences of African women leaders and to serve as a strong platform to enhance synergies and collaboration with existing women networks in Africa and worldwide. We're therefore looking forward to receiving strong support to make sure that African women leaders who have the support of Africa gain the full attention of the international community and of key stakeholders to make this noble effort a success. In closing, let me reaffirm that we are uniting to launch a group of friends of a network which will first gather strong political support from both the African Union and the United Nations. Secondly, has offered women on the ground tangible actions. And lastly, but not the least, it will undoubtedly continue to enhance cooperation amongst institutions, but most importantly, amongst people. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to both ambassadors. I'd like to now call to present her statement Dr. Dlamini of UN Women. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good evening. We are very honored to be here of service to you as member states and as part of the UN, charged with many things, but at UN Women, primarily charged with achieving gender equality and women's empowerment as invited by you. This is such an exciting venture. The world is in trouble. When you wake up each day in the news, there is something else that shows us that the world is in trouble. This morning, we woke up to a Security Council resolution being ignored and people continuing to die. We also woke up to the story of sex for aid. Now it feels like the sky is falling in. And the Chinese have a proverb that says, women hold up half the sky. Now, some women are waiting to be asked to hold up the sky, but this network has brought forth women who have come to the forefront and are holding the sky up and calling other women to join them. Women are doing their part in Africa through this network, and we are very grateful for the support of the AU, for the support of Germany, and the support of this group of friends as we hold up women's arms as they hold their half of the sky. And if women are holding up half the sky, you who are born of women know that we are all safe. And I can't point to one person in this room that is not born of women. Dr. Mlambo Ngcuka, Under Secretary General of UN Women, really wanted to be here. Couldn't be because she had a prior trip planned. So she sent the next best thing, which was her lookalike. I sometimes want to praise myself as if I could look as good. But she sincerely wanted to be here herself, and I'll be very happy to show her the pictures about your full turnout. Now, let's turn to the Africa Women's Leaders Network. In 8 months, this network has already completed a solidarity mission, as you have already heard, has also started up chapters in our most troubled areas like DRC, has started chapters in Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, has helped Zimbabwe gather all women from all across divisions on a solidarity meeting. And very soon after that, there was change in Zimbabwe. Coincidence? Has been working very quietly in the background, as women often do, on Kenya and its transition to a new term for the president. Has been discussing under the auspices of AU more inclusive and peaceful election processes. In this short time, these women have gotten together and they are making moves. If you want a job done, give it to a woman. This is what they are saying to all of us. There is another Ethiopian proverb that says, where a woman rules, streams run uphill, not downhill. Women are able to achieve the impossible with very little resources and very little noise, and no blood is shed. Look, for instance, at the Women's March that happened last year, or was it the year before, where people got out in America, all over, not one arrest, not one bomb, no violence whatsoever, but they were able to gather thousands of people. And yet, when we look at peace processes, when we look at economies, when we look at presidents in countries, women are nowhere to be seen. So this network is about changing that. Women will be seen and heard, and the world will be better for it. Through this network, women and their brand of leadership are going to help the world break the shackles of poverty that prevent the world's peace and prosperity, which is so well described and contained in the 2030 Agenda and in the Africa 2063 Agenda. In closing, I would like to salute all member states that are here today for joining this partnership with African women leaders. Most of all, I'd like to salute the African women themselves for coming forward, holding up half the sky so that we can live a more peaceful and prosperous life. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini. And now it's my honor to invite up to the stage Ambassador Hisgen, of the permanent representative of Germany to the UN, and crucially, vice chair of this group of friends.
Thank you so much for this welcome here. Thank you so much for all of you for coming. I'm very excited about this event. And Martha, I think we are doing a good job. We for the first time met when we went to Germany together. And in my former job, I was the diplomatic advisor to Chancellor Merkel. That is, I worked for 12 years for a woman. And now I'm very happy to be the vice chef and work for Martha. So. It's also an honor and privilege to get to know the new representative of the African Union. The African Union plays an extremely important role, and more so. And it's wonderful to have a woman here. And we also have, for the European Union, the representative, also a woman. And I was jokingly saying to them, in a few years, I think all the ambassadors will be superfluous, and the women take over the African Union, the European Union. I hear some opposition to this, so nevertheless, I think it's wonderful that so many ambassadors have come today, and the wonderful support that this network has had from the very beginning. Germany was also among the supporters when the African Women Leaders Network started in June, and we have been, we think it's a wonderful development. I don't have the same wonderful language as you have, Ambassador lookalike, or what? But I was just thinking the Rhine in Germany still flows the same direction, but the Chancellor is still holding up the sky over Germany, and she is right now still in forming a new government. She has decided now who the cabinet members will be from her party side, and for the first time there will be more women than men representing the Christian Democrats in the government. So Germany has been, not only because of the Chancellor, because we are deeply convinced of the importance of the role of women in all aspects, but in particular in aspect which is a key role here at the UN, and this is peace and security. And a stronger role for women leadership is something that we totally support. As I said, we have in Germany the experience. We have on my first trip, on the first trip of the Chancellor to Africa, she visited Monrovia at the time, and President Cyril Johnson, and to have a woman as a president was also, this is years ago, was a very good signal. So again, very happy that you all are here. The permanent representative of Ireland called me before and said she wanted to be here to support it, but she's on another women issue at another meeting, so she's excused. We would want, and this is also one of our objectives, African women leadership is very important for Africa, and Africans support that, and we see the strong support of the EU. But this has to be, and we want to be cross-regional. Europeans, others, the European Union, we go to other continents to support that, to support African women leaders, and go beyond this. So again, thank you very much. Thanks IPI for hosting us here, and I'm looking forward now as co-chair or vice chair of the group of friends to support Martha in the work that we'll start to keep the item on the agenda and see to it that we support this network. So thanks again for coming tonight.
Thank you, Christophe, for your words. And indeed, we're working very, very well together. Having had the exciting time in Germany and deciding to continue to work together. Not to take too much of our time, I just wanted to go a little bit into what the network, the group of friends, is seeking to do. Of course, we've heard very well how the network is serving as a platform to galvanize and boost women's leadership in Africa for peace and development in all sectors and at all levels. Building on and working with existing women's networks. The network is also serving as a transformative practical instrument to implement UN Security Council Resolution 1325 at the continental level. The network is seeking to increase women's participation in decision-making through peer learning and mentoring, solidarity missions, advocacy, capacity building, mobilization of funds to enhance women's financial inclusion and access to capital. Now, for the group of friends, we have the main objectives to be as advocates for an improved and comprehensive narrative on women's leadership in Africa. The group also seeks to support and guide the network in developing partnerships, and the cross-regional nature of the group is very critical. That's why we're so excited to have so many of you on board. The group will also seek to identify areas that will enhance the role and leadership of the network in advancing the women agenda in Africa with a focus on capacity building and skills transfer. It will also provide a platform, a ready platform for briefings and discussions on initiatives by African women leaders here in New York. And will also seek to inform the UN membership about activities of the network, such as the joint solidarity missions that we've heard that took place to the DRC and Nigeria. And more importantly, every day we want to provide the political support to the African Women Leadership Network. So this is just basically what the group seeks to do. We try to capture it in as few words as possible to get a sense, and I hope that it is something that we can all commit to doing. So through these specific actions, we hope to contribute meaningfully to the success of the network. And on this note, I wish to formally launch the New York Group of Friends of the African Women Leadership Network. Yes, I'd like to invite Ambassador. You're supposed to hold us. Am I missing the DPA?
Sorry, the DPA.
The DPA? The Department for...
Great. And before everybody leaves the stage, of course, we have to have members of the network on the stage with us. So, Her Excellency, former President Banda, and Nobel laureate Lema Boy.
Do you want to do the
Yes, that's what I'm doing now.
session with them?
Oh, for the session. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you have informally seen some of the special guests that we have here this evening. I would like to open the sort of questions section with some of the crucial members of the network and a representative from the UN, from DPA. With that being said, I would like to invite to join me on the stage Her Excellency, former President Joyce Banda, and thank you, and Nobel Prize winner, Ms. Lema Bowie, and UN Department of Political Affairs Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Zerouhan. So, I am going to start with former President Banda, Your Excellency. I'd like to ask a couple of questions to our experts who are here on the stage. So if you could all, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. First, I would like to ask you, Your Excellency, why is the political support from UN member states through this group of friends important for the advancement and success of the African Women Leaders Network?
I was told that I've only got 4 minutes to respond to this question, so I'll go right into my response. But I want to recognize in a very special way a powerful African woman, Lema Bowie, and of course the UN women, and the ambassador from Germany, and all distinguished friends of the network. I would like to respond this way. I will not bore you with any statistics because you already know them. They come from your offices. But I would like to speak from the heart to say that it is urgent. It is extremely urgent for friends to support the network because we are rushing and trying to achieve sustainable development goals by the year 2030. The last Millennium Development Goals failed to achieve MGD 3 and 5, both that affect women. And I think this time is a moral obligation for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly 5 and 8. The 2017 report states that gender inequality persists worldwide and the impairment of women will require special focus, legal framework to counter deeply rooted gender-based discrimination. We need to build the network, but also to encourage more women to ascend to leadership. Also support more women to participate in leadership, particularly political leadership. Madam Madeleine Albright led an initiative at the UN where they launched what they are calling under NDI, Not the Cost campaign, to fight abuses to women in politics. And we discovered that not enough is known, not enough research has been conducted to see what women are going through as they try to aspire to participate in leadership. We also need to have initiatives that encourage younger women to enter politics. And this network is going to be the vehicle to achieve that. Number two, African women leaders have organized themselves. As the Madam Chair said, we have come this far through UN Women and AU in Addis Ababa. We have demonstrated that we are determined. We are determined now like we were determined in 1995 when we went to Beijing. We know that a lot has to be done, but we cannot do it on ourselves. And that should give encouragement to friends to support us, because we are not just sitting back waiting for handouts. We are saying we want to educate our girls. We are saying we want to stop the unnecessary death of women giving birth. We are saying we want to promote young women to become leaders. We are saying our young girls ages 0 to 10 are suffering. They are going to school they are growing up in environments that don't encourage them and to thrive and to grow into the leaders they were meant to be. We also want to draw the attention of the world that women's leadership is under attack. You just go from Julia Gillard in Australia and go all the way to Brazil and see what has happened to women that have tried to participate in leadership at the highest level. Is there anything that we can do? Number three, I would like to say that it is important for friends to support this initiative. Friends here in America at the UN should be encouraged by what is happening in Africa now. I think every African should be proud to be African at this point in time. Africa has had 4 female presidents. I don't know how many America has had, but we've done well. We have done extremely well, and we should be proud. And the country with the highest number of women in parliament is on the continent of Africa. And the fastest growing economy, the country is Ethiopia, and it is on the continent of Africa. So much is happening. 3 countries made it to the top 10. That's what the World Economic Forum told us. So we are saying we have been proven right. We have been saying we are not asking to participate in leadership now. We've always been leaders, even before colonization. This time around, we are saying we are here. Those of us who have formed this network are saying we want to raise our voices on behalf of our women on the African continent. It's not acceptable that a woman should die giving life. It's not acceptable that 130 million women, girls around the world are not in school through no fault of their own. Is there anything we can do for Africa? And is there anything that you can do to support us to achieve that? Number 4 is to say that we need, therefore, to build on that momentum. The McKinsey Global Institute has said that the world could add 12 trillion to the GDP if women were allowed and encouraged and supported to participate in our economies. Is that too much to ask? We are saying that it is possible. Some of us have tried. And so we know what needs to be done in order for more women to participate in our economies. But for that to happen in the developing world, we need a critical mass of women leaders, this network, and our supporters to encourage us and to support us to go out there and to build the capacity of those women on the ground to participate fully in our economies. And finally, I would like to say that, yes, it is important for us to be supported by our supporters. Why? Because it makes sense. It makes economic sense. President Kagame asked why he has 40% of his cabinet female and why the largest number of women in parliament are in Rwanda. He answered and said, it's common sense. It's a matter of common sense. And the question I have is, why is common sense not very common? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to finally say that my sister who spoke earlier from the UN was more diplomatic. She's a diplomat, and she's younger than me, but I'm a grandmother. and I have nothing to lose, and I know you will forgive me. So I'm finishing with an appeal. There are more women than men in this world. Is that true or false? Now, if it is true, is it also true that these women brought into this world the other half? Is that true or false? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's common sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a powerful reminder that this is in fact common sense, and also a powerful reminder that the women leaders are already leading. It's up to us to support them. And on that note, I would like to ask Lema to, in her capacity as a Nobel laureate, but also as a vocal advocate for women peace builders, particularly at the community level, to tell us about some of the flagship activities of the network and walk us through how the group of friends can support greater empowerment and leadership for women on the ground.
Thank you. I doubt if I can go after President Banda. I'm going to try. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to Ghana and to Germany for hosting this and for chairing this. Like President Banda said, it's common sense to support women. You said it right when you indicated that I've spent my life's work, my short lifetime working with women. I like to tell stories because I feel like stories capture the heart of a lot of things that we do on a daily basis that you read as report. But most times, some of these reports, people tend, oh, here we go again. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of leading a delegation of women to DR Congo. And we were fortunate to be traveling with a group of New York Times reporters. We got to Congo and I knew exactly what the narrative would be. I knew that everyone on our media team would be looking for the stories of rape. They would be looking for the narrative of sexual violence and the difficulties that women go through. On one of the nights of our trip, we sat in a room with 100 women. And one after the other, I have these notebooks that I carry around with me that I tell my children when I'm old and gone, they can sell on eBay. It will tell people how crazy I was because that's where I put all of my thoughts. So I had a brand new notepad with me. And as these women talked, I was drawing a graph unknown to myself. And one after the other, the story was, I was raped. I wanted to kill myself. I felt there was no reason to live, and the women came. Then I had hope. And then the next person would start, I was raped. Life was bad. I wanted to kill myself, and the women came. After all 100 of them had given their testimony, I waited for the women on my delegation and the reporters to ask their questions. And one after the other, as I anticipated, the question was, how were you raped? How many times did you endure? Really reinforcing the stereotype. Midway through their questions, I asked them to stop. Did you all not hear? I was raped, I wanted to die, and the women came. No one had the common sense to ask, who were those women that came? How is it that when they came, you had hope and you didn't want to die anymore? So when we started asking, all 100 of those women in that room, though had been raped repeatedly, each and every one of them had held the hand of one other woman who had gone through rape, help her to see life differently, help her to start a business, help her to do something, and one after the other gave hope for a new life in the midst of crisis for the rest of these women to begin to do something. And at the end of the trip, I turned to all of the reporters and said to them, we all came with the narrative of DR Congo as the rape capital of the world. I want you all to go back to New York with this narrative that DR Congo is the capital of sisterhood. That is the African spirit. That is the spirit with which the African Women's Leaders Network was founded. We've been doing this from ages. I got my 101 lesson in feminism from my grandmother. Women have been building peace from Liberia to Rwanda to Sudan, even today in the worst crisis in the world. That solidarity is the spirit of our Africa. So that we've come together as African Women's Leaders Network, what we're saying is that everything that we've done at the community level, we want to take it at the middle and the top level. We want to translate it. We no longer want the narrative of the African woman to be that we sit down and allow ourselves to be raped, but that we are in the vanguard of fighting for peace, negotiating peace, and being the first responders when something like Chibok, God forbid, happens again. So that's the spirit with which. So we started with the solidarity meeting in Nigeria and then Congo. We're later on going to sit and hang our heads again later on this year in Addis Ababa to think about what else needs to be done. I personally joined this group because I feel like it's not going to be sitting in meeting rooms in New York all of the time, but we'll actually be out there doing the work that we do, linking with local grassroots activists and putting their work out there. So how can you help us? One analogy I gave my students here in New York and men that I talk to, and I don't want people to ever think that gender equality or the work that we're trying to do as African women's leaders is trying to take away. You know, sometimes when you're talking about women's work, there's a lot of cynicism in the room. But it's like she said, it's common sense to know that if we do this, I'll take a step back and give you another quick example. A few years ago, I worked in a village in Liberia where we brought in a group of pastors and religious leaders, and we're supposed to talk about gender. And the first comment I heard as facilitators was one pastor telling his friend, let's be very careful as we go into this lecture, they may try to change us. And that's the attitude, even at the top level. So we go into the room, and the only activity I want to do with them is to ask them to put up their salary on the board. But first to ask them, what does your wife do? And each of them said, nothing, stays home and gossip and eat my money. So one after the other, we put their salaries up and asked them, if you were paying someone, when does your wife wake up? 5 a.m. If you were paying someone to wake up 5 a.m., how much will you pay? They'll put a price tag to it. On and on and on until we got to nighttime and we got to the business of the night. How much will you pay for that? And they put it there. By the time we calculated and times it by 30, a lot of these women, by the calculation of their husbands, made more money than the men. So this is not about, it's about what we can give, how we can work together. If you think the work of women and what we're trying to do as African women's leaders is about wanting to take over, cover your one eye and try to see the entire room. You can never see the entire picture. And that's why it's important for you to support us. War raging in South Sudan is not just by funding, it's by creating the space for women to be at the peace table, to talk about the abuses and how we can straighten out our communities. And you, at the level of the UN and the AU, have the power to make that a reality. We're sick and tired of hearing 1325, 1820, and all of the numbers when they do not translate into action for women who are qualified and competent to be negotiators, to be mediators. Put Mama Banda in one room. She will make all of the other negotiators look very dumb because she has what it takes. So the time has expired where we consistently and persistently come to the UN and say, help us, get us there, give us funding. Like she said, and I'm going to end with that, is common sense. But if you think it's not common sense, use your one hand, cover your eye, and try to see the entire picture. You will never get it all. And this is how the world, this is how Africa is operating with its one eye cover. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the powerful reminder of what this work is actually about. I would like to just note as well that both the Nobel laureate and Her Excellency are founding members of the network, and so they're the ones that we can really thank for that work. And to wrap up our interactive session here, I have a final question for UN Department of Political Affairs Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Zirahun. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And the question is, from your perspective, how can the UN support the participation of women in peace processes, which, as our peace laureate has just reminded us, is still a space where we do not have sufficient women? How can the UN support the participation of women in peace processes through the African Women Leaders Network?
Thank you very much. Good evening. First, I want to thank Ghana and Germany for this occasion, for associating us. And I want to stress the full support of the Department of Political Affairs behind the initiative. The question is, in one sense, unfair because we have, for a very long time, realized the critical role and critical importance of women in peace processes as victims primarily of conflict and all of the atrocities that my eloquent predecessors have said. Women should be part of the solution, and their engagement makes any process more inclusive and more legitimate, and therefore sustainable. So we share very much many of the objectives of the network, but we have to start with the UN first. I must be frank. We have still a ways to go in the UN to give opportunities for women to engage in mediation and peace processes. That effort has been going on for a while, but we still have a ways to go. In the Department of Political Affairs, we have a wide network of partnering and cooperating with institutions, and a very high level of priorities given to our strategic partnership with the African Union, with other organizations, the European Union, and the sub-organizations, the sub-regional organizations in Africa, where we engage in a program to support them, identify women who can be entrusted with mediation processes. If there is a need for material support, we try to provide that. We also provide expertise. We have mediators in the department, standby mediators, I forgot the term, and we make them available. We train, we partner with member states, particularly the Norwegians and others, to organize specific events where we highlight the need for women to be empowered, for women to be given the opportunities to engage. I think a heavy burden should also, or lies on member states themselves. Member states also have to create opportunities for this in their own peace processes, but also in circumstances where the UN or regional organizations are engaged in peacemaking and in conflict resolution. Member states should also take the initiative to suggest and to offer women to help in this process. I think for those of you who are familiar with the Department of Political Affairs, we have had for a very long time an ongoing cooperation with the African Union in particular, but with other organizations, with SADC, and through our regional offices, really focused on this priority. As I said in the beginning, we have come a long way, and the Secretary General also has put this as one of his priorities. Parity is a necessary condition. Gender parity is a necessary condition, one of the conditions to allow these objectives that have been set to be implemented. I just want to reiterate that in the Department of Political Affairs, we intend to work closely with you, to partner with you, to see how we can fit a particular niche in the needs that you may have, but also in helping us identify women who we can ask to take responsibility in some of these, in the many peace processes that we have across the world. So for us, really, there is a felt need to partner with the network because I don't subscribe to this notion, which is oft repeated, that we couldn't find a woman who we can entrust with this or that mediation. I think they're there, and this partnership with you will help us in shortcutting this distance, this artificial distance that has been created. So I just want to reiterate our support and our commitment to work with you, and also to make the department's resources available when you need them. It's one thing to identify a facilitator or a mediator, but it's a whole different thing to equip that mediator or facilitator with the necessary expertise to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to take the podium mic again. Thank you so much for those insights and for spelling out exactly the challenges, but also the support that DPA and the rest of the UN are willing to throw towards this. That is the conclusion of the interactive session. I want to thank the commenters again for their wise insights, particularly the reminder that the important support that needs to happen in New York for the work of the network, which is definitely happening outside of New York. So with that, I'm going to, I think I'm handing it to Ambassador Poby to make the final statements. We have a fluid schedule. Yes? Yes, please, that would be wonderful.
Let me save you. It seemed like she needed to be saved. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back again because I have been mandated by the DSG to make her remarks on her behalf. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here this evening. She's stuck in negotiations, but she really wanted to be here. So I will read her statement on her behalf. Hopefully, I'll be able to do her justice. Distinguished guests, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure. It's a great pleasure this evening to see the launch of the New York Group of Friends of the African Women Leaders Network. This is an important milestone for the network. It signifies a real example of partnership between and across regions, institutions, and civil society. It is a step forward in closing the gap between the reality of African women, which can be one of marginalization, and their aspiration to be fully included at all levels of decision-making and in all political processes. It is a step forward in making African women equal partners in initiatives that directly affect them, and for their voices to be amplified within and beyond their communities, their workplaces, and their countries. I was with you last June when the network was launched, and I recall the dynamism and excitement in the room. There was a real sense that when strong, powerful women leaders, young and old from all backgrounds, come together, beyond political divides or ideologies, we can move mountains. Since then, the momentum has continued to grow. The DRC and Côte d'Ivoire have launched local chapters of the network, and membership has grown from the original 80 founding members to more than 100. These members are truly impressive, including Ms. Catherine Samba Panza, Ms. Fatima Askira, Ms. Leila Zerugi, Ms. Lema Bowie, which we heard from this evening, and others, many of whom have taken up new leadership roles on the continent and beyond. We're currently working with UNECA to consider launching an African Women's Fund to support women's leadership in Africa for peace and development. The UN is committed to the AWLN, which is supported by Germany and led by UN Women and the African Union through the Office of the AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security. I commend Ghana and Germany for spearheading this process to create a cross-regional New York group of friends of the AWLN and to the more than 30 member states who are founding members. Ladies and gentlemen, the critical role of women in leadership has been recognized at the highest levels. The UN and the AU have begun the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and Agenda 2063, which at their core address the critical role of women. The Security Council has also recognized the need to increase women's representation at all levels of decision-making for the prevention and resolution of conflict. Prevention is a priority for the Secretary General, and women's meaningful participation is essential to our success in this area. A critical step is to ensure that women and girls, half of the world's population, receive the investment, opportunities, access, and protection they require. We have a responsibility to make gender equality a reality, and we need to support women-driven initiatives like AWLN with our advocacy and resources. Last July, I was part of a joint UN-AU solidarity mission to the DRC and Nigeria, accompanied by UN Women Executive Director, the UN Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, and the AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security. We saw there the resilience of women and girls in the most challenging of circumstances and the extraordinary strength that they possess when they raise voices in unity. In Nigeria, I met with a group of women leaders from the northeast of the country. I was especially moved by the story of one young woman who is working with internally displaced women in a nearby camp to help overcome the sexual exploitation they face by the men managing food distribution and their vulnerable community. By bringing women into the distribution process, she was able to help improve food security while protecting women from exploitation and violence. She represents the precise spirit, ambition, creative thinking, and leadership that the AWLN can and must foster. What we're building here is a movement for gender equality, a movement for peace, a movement for economic livelihoods, a movement for humanity. Thank you for being part of it. Let's keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'm sure the DSG will be pleased to know that she's been very well represented, and I wish to extend our thanks to her through you. Excellencies, we finally come to the end of our launch ceremony, and I wish to express sincere appreciation to each and every one of you who has been here, has stayed with us right through to the end. Thank you for your commitment to making this group truly cross-regional and a dynamic platform. One of the immediate and concrete next steps that we wish to undertake is a side event, and I want to make this announcement to all of you, to invite you already. A side event to be held during the 62nd session of the Commission on the Status of Women, with a focus on political participation of women living in rural areas. The group will also, working at the expert level, will meet at the beginning of April to prepare the groundwork for the group's contributions to the high-level meeting on sustaining peace agenda, which is being convened by the PGA. I urge all member states who are part of the group to ensure their participation in these activities, and in this regard to reiterate our request that focal persons be designated within your respective missions for effective coordination. So in conclusion, let me reiterate again my sincere appreciation to the AU Ambassador, the United Nations, from the Department of Political Affairs and UN Women. And please pass our thanks on to the Executive Director for their support to this group. I know that Christopher and myself will continue to engage with you and take on the promises that we've heard, particularly from the Department for Political Affairs, to move the process forward. Thank you also to Your Excellency, President Banda. Once you're a president, you're always a president. Thank you. Thank you so much for your inspiring words. And thank you to our Nobel laureate, Lima. I think she's probably left the hall. Very inspiring, and we thank you for coming all the way to make this such a success. We owe a debt of gratitude to the IPI for hosting us and for moderating in such a wonderful way. I look forward to working with all of you for the advancement of this initiative so that we can truly leverage this unique partnership into achieving the overriding principle of not leaving anyone behind. The lessons learned in this, I believe, will extend beyond Africa into every part of our global village. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening.